It's finally time, ladies and gentlemen. There's a Starfield waiting in the sky because this is VGC, a video game podcast with me, Jordan Midler, Chris Scullion, and Jade King. Finally, after all this time, after months and months and months, I've had the game since 2017, we can finally talk about Starfield. But before that, Jade, how you doing?
Good. Playing a lot of Baldur's Gate 3, not a lot of Starfield, you know. That big game of the week.
Just playing the longest games ever made just for a laugh.
It's been insufferable this past month. It's been amazing, but also, oh my god, that's too much.
I'm choking for a wee 10-hour single player experience that you'd finish in like a couple of nights.
Just a 25-hour short one. That would be nice.
It'll be interesting when we get to those kind of games in the next couple of months. It'll feel like we're flowing through them. Chris, you've been playing hundreds of hours of Starfield this week. How you been finding it?
Oh yeah, I'm never off it. No, I haven't touched it. When you said you've had it since 2017, does that mean like 8:15 last night?
Yeah.
I actually have been playing a 10-hour game this week, which I think we'll talk about later. So I've been kind of happy with that. Although I was like in tears by the end of it, so it's maybe not the most exciting way to spend 10 hours. But yeah, fun times.
I've been in tears playing Starfield, but it's only because it's absolutely knackered my wrist. But let's get onto it. We're going to patch the headlines for the second half of the show. Let's talk Starfield now. People, you don't need to worry. We will not be spoiling the game. A game that actually has more significant like story related spoilery stuff than I was expecting it to. Like the second half gets really, really strange. But Jade, top line, first of all, how do you feel about Bethesda games generally, and how do you feel about Starfield? Because I feel like that will really influence how people like go on this one.
I feel like Fallout 3 was my first proper Western RPG, so I was brought up on that Bethesda mold. I loved Fallout 3, loved Skyrim, kind of fell off the wagon with Fallout 4, like I think a lot of people did. They were like, this needs to change. But I think coming into Starfield, this is probably the best Bethesda RPG since Fallout 3, I think.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those games, 1,000,000%, but also it does a lot of like cool, fascinating things, but still just lets you do whatever you want. It's very good. Like I think you said before, it's a very, very good one of those games, and that's spot on.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I fall down on it. It's when I was writing my review, I felt myself thinking it doesn't really do anything like revolutionary in any way. Like there's no Red Dead conversation system where you can talk to any NPC, anything like that. There's nothing that's really going to be the thing that in 10 years people say, oh, Starfield did this, but it does so much, and it kind of feels like them finally nailing what they've been trying to do for those Bethesda games for so long. So people, it's weird because they've talked so much about this game, but there's also people that were like not quite sure what it was going to be. Honestly, saying it's Fallout in space gets you a lot of the way there in terms of the combat, in terms of what you're doing for missions and stuff like that, in terms of like the way you interact with when you start talking to someone, you zoom into their face and there's like a depth of field effect. Like all of that stuff gets you there. So essentially we're Fallout in space. You start as just this random miner, Johnny Anyman, or any woman or anyone really. The kind of that part of it fell down for me a wee bit in terms of the role playing, because after I made my character, I was like, I'm not going to think about him ever again. It's kind of unfortunate we mentioned Baldur's Gate 3, because Baldur's Gate 3 is such an RPG. Like you're constantly, it's all about your character. You're seeing them all the time, and there's a few moments in Starfield where you do see your character, and I literally didn't recognize them. I was like,
no, that's it.
Yeah,
no one plays these games in third person.
Yeah,
especially, what did you think of the opening? Because that was probably one of the weakest parts of the game for me.
Yeah, I thought it's weird because obviously part of playing through the opening, I was just kind of overawed by the fact that I was like, okay, right, we're playing it. It's time to actually see what this game is. But on a replay to capture from some footage of it, it is a bit slow. It doesn't really. It's quite handholdy. It doesn't really get you to do like the fun stuff until you're like an hour and a half in. But yeah, I suppose there's always an element of that in these games. Obviously, Fallout 3 is the most egregious example with like the 2-hour prelogue and Vault 101 and stuff like that. But yeah, for you, Jade, did you, when you finished the intro, did you go straight to doing like Constellation missions? Constellations are like the main mission, that's like the main faction in the game, or did you decide to just go wild and float about?
I went to New Atlantis first thing, which is like the first big city you see and one you return to. I met everyone in Constellation, and after that, I literally buggered off into space for about 20 hours and didn't think about going back to the main quest until someone at the gamer told me, "Oh, there's some really cool stuff here," and I thought, okay, and then I got wrapped up in it again. But yeah, this is very much, once you get the rigmarole out of the way in the beginning, you can totally just go where you want, do what you want. You'll be hamstrung, I think, if you don't have some stuff unlocked. But you can, I did not stick around the main quest.
Yeah. I ended up doing the complete opposite because I thought Constellation was just going to be like one of the... I didn't realize it was the main faction. I thought it was just one of these people you'd meet. So I was like flying through Constellation missions and I was like, this feels like it's really pivotal content, and then it got to one bit.
Am I going to get to the end credits in a minute?
Yeah, like obviously there is a choice in the Constellation kind of mission system, and I was like, surely they're not going to make me choose this now because this will cut off like a load of the game for me. And once that happened, I was like, okay, let me just basically turn around and go in every other direction. And then I was running into all these quests that were clearly designed for you when you're like level 7 and I'm like level 25. Yeah. Like, oh crap, they're talking to me like I'm some rookie like 3-star ranger, not as if I've been like across the galaxy saving the world. It's a weird one to talk about because I feel like most people who are interested in it, obviously you can play it on Game Pass as of next week. They're not doing the early access thing on Game Pass, and it's a really easy sell on Game Pass because there's just so much to do. You just keep it installed forever. Did you play it on PC or Xbox, Jed?
I jumped between primarily Xbox, I think, but when I was doing capture or just like wanting to play it while I was working, I was on the PC version.
Yeah. Look, we might as well talk about that now. My experience with the Xbox version, pretty crap.
Really?
Yeah, it ran pretty terribly for me on Xbox, and I don't know if it was like... So I started on Xbox, and then I downloaded it on my PC, which has like... It's got like a 4090 and stuff like that. It can run on Ultra for everything, so I am not comparing the Xbox to the PC version in that way. It was just when I went back to Xbox, I was like having loads of frame rate dips, I was having insane loading times, but did you not experience that?
I'd say the PC version is superior. Like, I'm like you. I ran it on Ultra, 1440p, very little issues. But on Series X, it's locked to 30. I think it's in the 4K round. I'm not too sure. But no, I didn't have a single crash on Xbox, and the loading time seemed relatively comparable to PC on an SSD, which is strange, because I came away from the Xbox version thinking it's way less problematic than it should have been for a Bethesda game.
Well, that is another thing. Like in terms of bugs and stuff like that, I didn't really run into much. But my experience with the Xbox version wasn't great, and a few people I've spoken to who were swapping between have said similar. It has been nice to be able to just swap between. Like the Play Anywhere stuff is really solid. But
do you think like social media is going to be full of people sharing bugs anyway? Because a lot of people have these preconceptions of what they expect a Bethesda game to be at launch, and I think a lot of people are hoping there'll be a lot of bugs in it. And obviously every game that has ever existed has bugs in it, and I wonder if, especially those who are looking for this game to fail because they may sit on a certain side, might be actively looking for clips of bugs and making your bug montages and stuff to kind of give the impression that it's buggier than it actually is.
Yeah, definitely. There will be like an arms race to have like the best bug compilation video on YouTube straight away and on TikTok and stuff like that. But it's just not. I've played so much more buggier games this year. Yeah. The only real belter I had, and it's part of the video review, was I was talking to the leader of one of the factions, and his hair and his chest and everything apart from his head and his arms disappeared. So it was just this floating head in the middle of the screen. And I was like, it's so nice that this is the kind of bugs we're dealing with in a Bethesda game and not game-breaking, quest-annihilating ones. Do you get any good bugs, Jade?
The longer you keep the game running, like I was in the cockpit of my ship and I left it idle for a good few hours while I was just doing other things, and I discovered like some of the detail, like hair and like eyes and stuff on characters, will slowly get worse and worse as the game stays on, which was bizarre. And that was funny, but like a reset fixed it. But one thing I will say
it's got real-time aging.
Yeah, it's really innovative in that regard, you know. One thing I will say is there's no like I haven't encountered like a single hard crash or like quest breaking bugs or anything, but it does have that like charming Bethesda jank, like the way NPCs move around or initiate conversations. Like if you talk to someone and they're like sitting down or behind you, they'll just twist their head Exorcist style to talk to you. Or if there's a conversation between two people in different rooms, I was talking to Solomon Coe, one of the companions in Constellation, just having a chat, like, "You right, mate?" And his daughter was in the conversation with me, but she was downstairs in the basement, but she still responded to what we were saying in the lobby, so it kept jumping back and forth, and it made no sense. And, like, people will walk funny, or you'll hear the same lines over and over again if you're, like, traveling with a companion. It's stuff like that, but beyond that, no, it's pretty bugless. I've spent like 40 hours of it, maybe.
So I'm like, by the end of today, I'll probably cross somewhere in like the 100 range, and it is stuff like just like there was a pre-release patch that came out, and it was like it fixes an issue where occasionally characters will float, and there is a couple of those, like especially in the lodge for Constellation. It's got like a couple of different levels in the main area, and characters will just be like very slightly leaning over the edge of one of them, and it's like, oh, this is just, for a game of this size, this stuff just doesn't matter. It's not like Cyberpunk where the game was like falling apart on console. Like
everything was floating in the review build. I remember playing that, and they were like, it'll be fixed. But with this, before the day one patch, I was like almost astounded by how smooth it is.
Yeah. It's really, really solid. And in terms of like the only crash I had was there was a moment in the game where you like jump through space and you're immediately attacked, and I kept getting killed at this bit because I couldn't get away fast enough, and that repeating that over and over again, the game was just like, no, we're crashing here. But it's I really expected it to be a bit of a bin fire. Like as I say, my experience on Series X wasn't great, but it's still it's the whole the whole game's still there. Like it's still, you're still getting the Starfield experience. It's just not this like premiere thing. I really want to see what it runs like on a Series S, because
me too. I haven't spoken to anyone, but that's got to be, if this game is going to be rough, it's going to be rough on a Series S.
Yeah. Chris, you'll need to report back. You're a Series S haver, aren't you?
I dabble between them both, but I'm not touching it till Christmas, so you'll need to wait. Unless you, I'm sure Digital Foundry will have something, because I hear they've got code.
Oh, do they?
But other than that,
Lucky.
like, I mean, you'll need to wait till Christmas for my feedback on it, because that's my Christmas break game. I'm not touching it.
You must have found that code down the back of the couch. I think it's really good. I'm really happy with it in terms of my expectations. Like, so before the game came out and they showed all these showcases and stuff like that, I was like, oh, there's so much to do here, all the shipbuilding, all the outposts and stuff like that. I barely touched the outpost stuff.
I haven't at all. I built one outpost, screwed up, and left it.
Yeah. It's like in Fallout 4, like they had all the base building stuff, and like, it's cool that it's there, and there will obviously be videos like there was with Fallout 4 of like, oh, look at this person who's built like a palace in this outpost system. But does it ever feel like there's a bit too much going on, Jade, do you think?
I think, especially because in regards to like, you can land on a planet and build an outpost or whatever on any of them, and it can be your base of operations. It doesn't really explain any of those mechanics.
Yeah.
You kind of just discover them as you play. And I think as a result, and there's so many resources and stuff to gather, you kind of just don't bother with it. Yeah.
In terms of like the landing on the planets, obviously there's a big bag of No Man's Sky hanging over this when you can land on any planet, although it's crucially the difference with No Man's Sky is you're not free landing on any planet in terms of actually flying down there and flying the ship on like planet level. All that stuff's animation. But when I landed and I was like, oh, you've picked up like aluminum and you've picked up all these different materials, I was like, this feels like a totally different game with all this scanning stuff that doesn't feel quite as fleshed out as the like Bethesda RPG part of the game. So I wonder if that's something they'll kind of look to more. I also thought the menus generally were kind of clunky, like in terms of like flying from system to system and stuff like that. there was just a few times where it was like, okay, set your route and then jump, and then it would be like it wouldn't quite work. Or the worst part is, so when going from system to system, you need to use your grav drive, and each ship has a different capacity for how far it can jump. But some ships will be able to go 10 systems away if you go system to system, but can't just go from 1 to 10. And doing that a few times, I was just like, this is like, I get realism for realism's sake, but this just feels like adding loading screens and stuff like that. So that feels like something they could smooth over. Was there anything like that for you, Jade, that you thought was a bit awkward, or something that you think could be maybe polished up a bit?
Yeah, I think in general, like, ahead of release, they've made a big deal about 1,000 planets and all that stuff, and you can explore every one of them. But the reality is, like, as you said, the hoops you jump through to land on planets and travel to the different systems arguably isn't worth what you find there, which is a lot of just like procedurally generated like outposts or caves where there's normally like nothing in them worth caring about, and scanning resources, which if you're not bothering with the upgrades or the construction side of things, also don't feel as compelling. I think that's a large part of where Starfield falls short, is in the big like galaxy-wide exploration, because it both isn't that interesting, and I feel like in Starfield a lot of the main quests and the characters are better than they've ever been. Because on Twitter and stuff, people have been complaining about like, oh, you can't walk across an entire planet and it stops after like 10 minutes of walking in real time. But trust me, you do not. You will get very bored very quickly before you do any of that.
Yes, it's not that game, and the stuff on the planets is like, oh, there'll be like a gravitational anomaly, and there's like each planet has a little menu of you scanned 78% of the fauna and the flora and stuff like that, and you can do that for XP, but some of it feels like they knew they were making a space game, and they knew if they had planets you couldn't land on, people would be like, this isn't the freewheeling Bethesda world we want, so they had to do something. I don't know if they've said, but I assume that stuff's procedural. Like, I assume those like small wee caves and little outposts and stuff is procedural, but there's been just enough of them that I've landed on, and there's been like a little story or a little something or other that it does tempt you to land on all of them. The game is good about saying to you if a planet is completely barren and pointless to land on, so there is something in that. But yeah, I almost wish there was like a list of all the planets and like tiers or something like that. It's like, here's the planets with big cities on it, here's the planets with like smaller stuff on it, because I can't remember what planet is in which system and what part of the star map and stuff like that. Like all that stuff's a bit kind of muddled.
It sounds like someone needs to write a guide.
Just
a guide to the universe.
But, yeah, the cities themselves are incredible. Like they're like Night City, but several times over in Cyberpunk. Like New Atlantis, Aquila, Neon, they're all huge. You could spend tens of hours in these cities alone, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty overwhelming when you land on those big cities, because it's like, okay, this is clearly going to be like the equivalent of another single player game's worth of stuff in here. Like, I was finished with the game, and obviously
not yet.
Have you finished it yet, Jade? Okay, so obviously I'm not going to say how it ends, don't worry, but there's like, and people have been asking about like, oh, is a Bethesda game, is there a big thing at the end that stops you playing it or something like that? But the game is good about saying, this is the ending, like, you're about to do the ending, go and mess about. And I was like, okay, I'll mess about. And I was finding areas like in New Atlantis that I'd never been to, like in little there's like a TV station that you can go and sell stories to, where you just make up stuff about what you've been doing, or it can be like legit and stuff like that. So it's a game that does not translate well to trying to cover it in a certain amount of time, because in an ideal world, like the way I played Fallout 3 and the way I played Fallout 4, I would still just be in full on messing about era. I'd be getting up to like level 70 before I even finished the main quest, whereas in this, I think I was level 35 by the time I finished it, and that seemed to be like just like playing a lot of side stuff. The only side stuff I haven't played, the only faction is like the cult. I can't remember the name, but
Mind or something.
Yeah, there's like a cult that you interact with at some point, kind of early in the game, within the first hour, you do a mission and you have to like sneak past them in a ship, which like a ship doing stealth is like a funny concept in its own, but I never really interacted with them. Speaking of, what do you think of the lack of a karma system?
I quite liked it, because I think in past Bethesda games it's always been, especially Fallout 3, you're either like Hitler or Jesus, and if you try to go in between, it was kind of less rewarding. But I think in this it's more akin to like Cyberpunk or The Witcher, where you kind of, the decisions you make are morally dubious. They can be good or be evil, or just be the kind of character you want to play. And I appreciated that sort of breadth, because I found with the companions as well, some of them were more sensitive to stuff I do, or some of them didn't mind me being evil. Like Andresia, who's the companion I kept for most of the game, whenever I stole stuff or like accidentally killed someone, she'd kick off, so I kept having to reload my save. But yeah, like I haven't hit any pivotal big plot decisions yet that in a past Bethesda game would be associated with a karma system. But I think I prefer the lack of one over a stringent one.
That's good to hear. That's something I generally dislike about games, when they had a good or a bad system to them, because like I don't like when a game, when you have to kind of commit to one all the way through, because when you're dealing with so many NPCs, like there might be a guy who I think, this guy's a wank, and I don't want to be nice to them, but then you meet somebody else and go, I want to help you out, and it doesn't really work with a system where you're expected to be nice or evil to everyone. But I like that. I like the fact that you can pick and choose, essentially.
Yeah, it's more kind of like you'll do something and you'll get a reaction from your companion. It'll be like Sarah Morgan, who's the one that I used mostly, was like this, loved this, disliked this, hated this. Or if you do something really egregious, it'll be like, it's no longer following you.
I'm leaving, mate. I've had it.
There was a mission.
I got that a couple of times.
There was a mission. It messed up for me though, because there was a mission where I had to go and like speak to someone to get money they owed. And you could talk to them if you killed like all the kind of pirates around them. It would like take them out of their aggro state, and you can just speak to them. So I threw a grenade to like one of the pirates, and this person ran over there and got blown up by the grenade. And Sarah Morgan was just like, "I'll see you later. I'm not dealing with this anymore."
But this one specific individual, not having it.
Yeah. There's obviously there's like romance options and stuff like that in the game. Like I was talking to my partner about it. It's hilarious. Like for the majority of my time with Sarah, she's just like, not so sure, not so sure. Then you do one mission and she's like, marriage? Should we get married now?
That's how it works.
I've been flirting with everyone,
yeah.
so we'll
in
see
real life,
how
that's
that
how it
lands
works.
me in the end.
That's the Baldur's Gate and you talking. That's where's big Karlach? We need a character like Karlach and Starfield. You get a lot of companions. Like within about 5 hours, you have like 8 people on your ship, and it was strange because did you pick the adoring fan?
No, I didn't. I picked space parents, and I couldn't kill them. So that was sad.
So I got that. Can't get exclusive. I've been wanting to know that since they showed the space
I've got a video.
parents.
I'll send it to you. You can't do it.
Okay, good. The adoring fan is obviously like a Bethesda staple, but once you get him and he's on your ship, the problem is you take off and land so much, and he has take off and landing dialogue that eventually just repeats. So it's like every single time it's like, oh man, I'm gonna put a bullet in the back of this guy's head. I've tried, but I don't know.
He's fast.
Yeah, he's rapid. I've tried, but he just went into like a down state, and then it stopped letting me shoot him.
He comes back.
Yeah. The companion system is straight. It feels weird that you can't take more than one person out on a mission with you, but I suppose there's a aspect of that would kind of perhaps break the way the combat works, which I think the combat is the best they've done. Like in terms of the actual shooting, it's far and away the best they've done. Not that is saying tons, because obviously the shooting in Fallout 3 is absolutely awful. It's a bit better in Fallout 4, but they can rely on the fact that they have that, so no one really bothers about the fact that the like normal shooting is bad. But what kind of build were you using? I found like a really overpowered laser shotgun quite near the start, and I honestly used that for about 15 levels, even though it was so like far behind where my curve was.
With the 3-star collective, so I was going like the big space cowboy route for a large amount of my playthrough. So I had a mixture of like silenced weapons and melee weapons. and was using some other stuff, and trying to be stealthy and failing. But yeah, I think there is a lot of versatility here for builds, but the enemy AI doesn't always allow for it. But we'll see.
Yeah. There are some cases where they'll just spin on a sixpence and be like, "Oh, there you are." That's another thing. There's like pivotal mechanics that are locked behind skills that they never really tell you about unless you like poke around. Like being stealthy is locked behind a skill. The entire stealth meter, yeah. Like the certain dialogue options that are perk. The jetpack that they've shown in like every single piece of pre-release media is a perk that you have to pick. Like it's kind of strange. Like it has all the Bethesda stuff you expect in terms of like there's lockpick. Oh, what do you think of the new lockpicking minigame?
Unironically, it's like Bioshock by puzzles, but less bullshit.
Yeah, it made me feel incredibly stupid though, because there's like a novice one on the second mission, and it's an optional objective to open the safe, and I was like, it gives you like 5 digipicks, because we can't have bobby pins in space. They have to be digipicks. Yeah, and it gives you like 5 of them outside the safe, and I was like, if I can't do this in 5 and it's a novice, then I do not know what I'm going to do. But yeah, that stuff's that was okay. It's interesting that there's basically if you succeed one of these checks, whether it be a lockpick or a speech check, it will build up a wee meter and occasionally give you like automatic wins. Like you can just press a button and skip through it, which I thought was decent. Jade, what did you think about the new persuasion system? Because it's no longer just a hard number that you are good enough at speaking to be able to beat someone. It's like almost it's like almost a gamble where you can pick an easy option, but you have to do a lot of these easy options in a row, or there will be a difficult conversation option where you basically just call them a bastard, but that'll win the check. What did you think about that? I thought it was
okay. It feels a bit unnatural sometimes when you like enter that state, especially if you rush through it.
Yeah.
And you get it right. They're just like, all right, you convinced me not to like kill this dude, and here's some money as well. I unlocked a perk as well where you can essentially just bribe people. But depending on like their moral standing, they'll either be disgusted or you can just win the challenge outright. But it's nicer than just having a percentage and playing your luck. It feels like you're playing a role in convincing them as opposed to just leaving it to chance.
And it sometimes felt like in those conversations, the entire tone of the conversation and the tone of my character would change. Like, yeah, it's like they have a certain amount of. I would look at these responses and I'm like, I don't think any of these work for the person that I'm talking to here. Like, and then it would be like this hard nosed like guy who works behind a bar and he's like, oh, you can go and find this person if you want. I don't give a shit about him. And then one of the options is like, you don't want to lose him, do you? And then you say that and he's like, oh, okay, maybe I don't want to lose him. And it's like, how was I supposed to guess that other than the fact that it was like low
I'd go
on
from
the
like,
on
I'll
the
kill
thing?
your family, and he's like, all right, don't. And then I'd be like, come on, I'm a good guy. And he'd be like, yeah, all right. Then you go,
yeah. Yeah, it can be a bit awkward sometimes. Like, and also it feels unnatural sometimes. There will be arbitrarily like 4 or 5 of these checks that you have to pass in a row, and it feels like after the first bit of the conversation you've already convinced them and you're still trying to convince them, and then maybe you'll convince them 4 times and then the last one will fail and they'll be like, oh, get the fuck, I'm not interested in you anymore, go away. I mean, what do you think is better, this or just the sheer like a Baldur's Gate 3 D20 roll when it comes to stuff like conversation?
Because I do like, it does feel just like an extra layer, because in Bethesda games you're kind of picking dialogue options anyway that determine where you go and what you get without entering a persuasion mini game. So it can just feel like an extra unnecessary layer when like a dice roll is almost like a greater sense of risk.
Yeah, and obviously in playing through Baldur's Gate 3, the majority of what I was doing was just like opening the menu and quick saving and quick loading just to make sure I got that dialogue anyway. So it doesn't really like, that was something I wasn't doing in Starfield, not only because it doesn't let you save during conversations, which I think was very intentional. So yeah, that's a weird change. The side missions and activity system I thought was interesting, because there are so many instances of like infinitely generated missions that are so obvious. Like, you go to a mission board and it'll be like, go and kill Johnny Pirate, he's on Galaxion 3, and then for whatever reason I had to reload a save and check it again, and it's like, go and kill Johnny Trader, he's on KO35, and it's just like find replace, that you can do that stuff infinitely for credits and stuff like that. But in terms of actual side missions, well, I say already, I've played like 1 billion hours of it. Quite early on I was finding missions that were like, okay, this feels like classic Bethesda long ass side. Have you done the Mantis side mission, Jade?
No, I don't think so.
So there's a side mission involving like this like legendary ship and this legendary like space traveler, and going through this mission that you can get quite early on gets you a ship that is like an end game ship essentially.
Oh, I need to do this then. Okay.
Yeah, and it's like okay, but this is exactly what I want out of a weird Bethesda side story. I thought the mission menu is like quite difficult to parse sometimes, because it's just this massive stack of stuff, and like deciding what's actually active and what you're doing there is like, there could be, remember like a year after The Witcher 3 came out, they released an update that like completely cleaned up all the menus. Like, I feel like Starfield could maybe go for one of them, because it's a wee bit awkward, but the stuff that is to moan about in Starfield is so minor compared to how good the rest of it all is. Like, it was a weird kind of almost boring review to write, because it was just like, yeah, I really like it. I love Bethesda games, and this is one that I can love pretty much unconditionally. Whereas loving Fallout 4 is like, yeah, it's very Fallout 3, and yeah, it's pretty broken, and yeah, the story's
it's
pretty
this,
shit.
Yeah, I agree. With Starfield, I can forgive the small flaws that I have, the small problems I have with it, because I'm constantly doing cool new shit and progressing in a way that feels deeper than other Bethesda games that have come before this.
Definitely. I think so. The skill system, you get a skill point for each time you level up, and you have this big massive skill tree, and then for each skill there's 4 ranks of it, but you can only unlock the next rank if you complete a challenge. So say you pick pistol certification, in order to even spend a skill point to upgrade that, you need to get 20 pistol kills, which I thought was like an interesting kind of incentive of actually use the thing you've been doing. Some of them are a bit ludicrous though, because I can't remember what one it was, but one of the skills was like shoot every bullet in your clip X number of times. So the entire time I had this challenge, it was just sliding on the screen over and over and over again, because I was like emptying my shotgun over and over and over again. But yeah, I feel like do you feel like you're leveling up quick enough, Jade? There was maybe a part of me that was like, I wish I maybe had about 20 more skill points by the time I got to where I was.
I felt like I was leveling up at a decent clip, but the progression that you get from that is quite glacial, especially because you have to go and chase those challenges, which feels like a halfway between your skills improving when you use them in Oblivion and like the perk system of, say, Fallout 3. Because it does feel like I'm okay at certain things, but I'm also awful at others, because I found out from a colleague that one of the late game faction quests is locked off until you have like, you're really good at ship combat, and if you haven't been like specking in that way, it's kind of, you're going to be screwed over unless you grind loads of levels, and I don't think there's a level cap.
No, I don't. I think Pete Hines came out and said that he thinks there's not one. So if he's not sure, we've certainly not had it yet.
Todd's just not told him.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's also, like, on the skill tree, to unlock later skills, you obviously have to be investing into that tree. So there's some later stuff that I would like, but I'm like, I'm not going to spend what are essentially dead levels to get there. So, I mean, there's probably, similar to back in Skyrim, where you could just make daggers forever, there's probably a good guide in how to just level up infinitely by killing random, like, bugs and stuff like that. It was a weird situation with the levels of enemies, because I feel like I was hitting enemies that were like, okay, this guy who's in the middle of all these enemies is level 50, then everyone around him was level 7, and I was getting like fairly similar XP for killing each of them.
Yeah.
So the levels don't seem to matter. There's also systems have levels, so there was a system that was level 75. I flew into it, and I was fighting pirates that were like 10 levels below me. So it's all kind of like...
And it's very much like you can kite an enemy into a corridor and blast them no matter what level they are. They'll deal more damage, but if you're smart enough, you can take down someone 20 levels your senior pretty easily.
That reminds me of, did you ever play Two Worlds on the Xbox 360? There's what a shit game. But one of my favorite games because it's so bad. The final end game dragon can be found right at the start of the game. Despite if you go a certain way, you can find the dragon, and when you hit it, it does like a recoil animation, and if you time it perfectly, you can hit it when it comes back from the recoil. So from like level 1, you can go and kill like the main dragon if you spend like an hour and a half just hitting it over and over and over again and get all the shit from it and suddenly become like this most overpowered guy in the world from beating just one fucking thing. It sounds like Starfield is slightly better than that.
Yeah, it's got a space dragon. It's a bit different.
Yeah. I think in conclusion to this section, we will say that Starfield is better than Two Worlds.
It's good enough for me.
It was a close competition, I think. Starfield just about edged it out.
I'm glad we can finally establish that on the VGC podcast. But yes, Starfield coverage across the world. My review is currently on the site. You can go and watch the video review. You can go and watch if this video processes, it's been processing for 12 hours. You can go and watch the first 80 minutes in 4K. And there's going to be Starfield coming out your neck. Jade, what's your coverage plan for Starfield? What can people go and see at 5 p.m?
Our review by Ben Sledge is coming, and I won't reveal the score. You have to go and read it. And we'll have a bunch of features coverage coming throughout the early access weekend, and a lot of guides and videos and all that good stuff. But yeah, Starfield for days. That's pretty much the situation here until Baldur's Gate 3 comes to PS5.
Oh yeah,
on the same bloody day.
I know. What an absolute joke. It's gaming season. It certainly is gaming season. We will be back after this break with a couple of headlines. And we are back. Story number 1, folks. Get your money out. Sony is raising PlayStation Plus prices by up to 35%. From September 6th, the price of the 12-month subscription for the service's Essential, Extra and Premium plans will rise by at least 33% for each tier in the US and at least 20% in Europe. 19% in the UK. Come on, Brexit. We got there. We got that 1%. Beginning next month, the prices will be as follows. PlayStation Plus Essential, which is your bog standard, will be $59.99 in the UK. PlayStation Plus Extra, which is the library of PS4 and PS5 games, will be $99.99. And PlayStation Plus Premium, which is the stuff that was aforementioned and the worst backwards compatible library you can possibly imagine, $119.99. This is perhaps expected because everything is getting ridiculously more expensive, but to announce that on the same month that you are announcing that your free game is Saints Row,
worth the money,
VGC's Saints Row, 2 out of 5 Saints Row, 2 out of 5, and that's generous. Saints Row. Chris, what did you think of this? Who's got the money for this?
My friend, I would give you 119 sterling for Saints Row alone. So I don't know what you're moaning about.
I think I've got about 5 codes for it if you want one.
Nah, it's passionate. It's like, like you say, like everything's getting more expensive. Like Game Pass went up recently, but this is like you say, like the premium one's the one that winds me up the most because of the other than the streaming, which I don't do anyway, so that doesn't affect me. So I'm massively selfish and I'm only thinking about my own needs here. That retro classics catalog isn't great. It's not it's not what I'd hoped it would be, with the exception of Ridge Racer Type 4 and Ridge Racer 2 on the PSP. I'm not feeling like you've got Tekken 1 there, but not 2 and 3, all that kind of stuff. It's like, it feels like there should be more on it by now, considering how long it's been going for now, and the fact that a lot of them don't release with trophies and all this kind of stuff. It's like, so to then say, by the way, that's an extra 20 quid now, I'm like, mate, you've got to show me something for that to kind of make it clear that extra 20 quid's going somewhere, essentially.
That was the thing. Like, I mean, full disclosure, for the first 15 months of this thing's existence, we didn't pay for it. We were added to it by Sony. And even then, I was jumping on it and I was like, I feel ripped off here. There's like nothing I want to play on it particularly. Like it was just so like the dream was obviously, oh, they're going to get all these PS1, PS2 games going. They're going to get these. They're going to find a way to get PS3 games working, but it just hasn't panned out like this. Jade, what tier do you pay for? Do you pay for PS Plus at all? Do you give a single shit?
I'm premium to my shame, but I'm monthly, and I'm not going to be for much bloody longer. I want to play Ape Escape on PSP, but not this much. It's like as Chris said, they've introduced this with nothing to show for it or to justify the price hike when it already feels quite expensive anyway before they've done and hiked it up.
Yeah, it's strange. I go now to our US correspondent, one Jeffrey Grubb, who said that he's heard a state of play is coming and this might be a lead-in. I could understand a universe wherein the state of play happens and they go, okay, mind PSVR 2, us neither, but see from now on, see in these certain tiers, you're getting a PSVR 2 game. The quality of monthly games, ignore Saints Row, the quality of monthly games is going to go up. This isn't going to become games with gold. And some other wee sweeteners.
That headset you don't own, here's a game for
that's the thing. Yeah, it's exactly. Like there are like 3 PSVR 2 games, so that'll only work for like 3 months. This whole like, I'm not paying 20 quid extra a year to get games for a thing I'm not buying because it's dead already. Like the PSVR 2, I'm sorry to say, is dead in the water already. That's not salvageable. Need to get around the back and shoot it just now instead of pretending that there's this vast library on the way. Any developers who aren't making games for it yet are not making games for it now because they've seen how it's gone. That nobody's going to make. Nobody right now is saying, I think I fancy making a PSVR 2 game.
There's nothing in the pipeline either. Like they had Horizon at launch, and now they've just been porting stuff. That's all that thing has.
As I said, I think Horizon will be the biggest thing that system ever gets. However, if you say that on Twitter.com, let me tell you, it's as if you've made fun of an Xbox executive. Let me tell you from experience.
That's why it's safe to say it on here when nobody's listening.
Oh yeah. Trust me, any stupid thing we say on this podcast, later in the day, I have a Twitter notification being like, "I can't, like, what you talking about? I can't believe you said that. God rest him," etc. So yeah, this is an unwelcome piece of news that they should have buried in a state of play alongside, like, oh, here's Cory Barlog's new game.
So they did try and bury it. They did try and bury it, but like you said, they buried it at the end of a Here's Saints Row thing, where people are already scrolling through to say, surely there's something better than this.
That's the worst chase possible.
Exactly, and at the end,
Here's Saints Row, and by the way, it costs more than you would want it to.
Imagine a week where Terry Funk and Bray Wyatt both die, and then we get hit with this as well. This is what a week.
It comes in threes.
What a week.
How am I supposed to afford this when? Do you know how many Pokemon cards I've got to buy, Chris?
1.
Do you know how much Blackberry bloody vape juice I've got to buy in my life? How am I meant to afford a massively inflated PlayStation Plus offering like this just to not use? That's always the best. See, in like March or January, whenever my auto renew is, I'm like, oh, I've got a good wee bit of money in my bank account. And then just one day, Monzo, £100 million comes out for PlayStation, and it's like,
thanks, Jim.
What was it Kevin Bridges said about vaping? He said he'd never trust anything. He would never smoke anything that you can charge through your PlayStation. probably wise.
Look, I've not got one of these. I've not got one of these big rigs. I'm just one of these people that once they get a drink in them, I need to buy a wee elf bar because it makes me feel a little bit special, you know.
Outlandish.
Right, this is such a vault fast, but on Sunday night I went to see Boy Genius, and I'd had many beveraginos, and I was holding 2 drinks and had the vape in my mouth, and I dropped the vape into the beer and it just all fizzed, and then the beer started tasting a watermelon vape, and I was like, this can't possibly be.
That sounds like it'd be alright.
A healthy way to live.
Maybe not good for you, but
I mean, inconclusive.
They don't know yet.
Yeah,
Try us in 30 years.
Before too long, we'll be saying God rest him about you.
We will be.
Sad days.
Look, people do lots of interesting things with vapes. Commenting on them is not our job. Next story, CD Projekt has explained why Phantom Liberty will be Cyberpunk 2077's only expansion. Shortly after this announcement last September, CG Projekt said the upcoming Phantom Liberty was the only planned expansion for the sci-fi RPG. Quote, the decision has actually been made when asked if sales of Phantom Liberty might inspire a second one. This was from Mikhail Nowakowski? Nowakowski. We'll go with Nowakowski. Quote, as we have announced a long time ago, we're not going to make a second or third expansion. This is the only expansion of the game, and it has nothing to do with the numbers or how satisfied or not we are with sales or anything of the kind. It's a technological decision, to be honest. This is the last time we're working on the Red Engine, for the time being at least, etc. and so on. Honestly, I think this is a decent shout. I feel like they need to get back to, like, the next CD Projekt game is going to be a masterclass in pre-release marketing in terms of, like,
yeah, they've learned their lesson.
You remember Cyberpunk, but see this Witcher game, much better. Trust me. What do you think about this, Jade? Do you think this is them being like, okay, let's get the Cyberpunk stuff done, let's get this old technology booted, let's just move on to, and I've not got the story here, but there's like 1 billion people working on this next Witcher thing. Do you think it's all hands on deck for that?
I think Cyberpunk burnt them, like, and they've crawled out of that hole somewhat recently. Like, people say Cyberpunk's like a good game now, and it's getting like more positive reception. But at the same time, you can't come back for that forever. I think they want to get this expansion out, have it do well, and then move everyone onto The Witcher and almost pretend it never happened, or get another Witcher hit on their hands.
Yeah, there's Cyberpunk. The memification of Cyberpunk is difficult to avoid, but Andy either played it or just saw it for the new expansion, and they were like, "Yeah, we've redesigned all the core systems."
They're redoing everything, and that's a free patch for the older versions too, which is a good shout.
I mean, it definitely is. I've always said that even if the original Cyberpunk, if launch Cyberpunk worked perfectly, it's still not a brilliant game because it's just a super generic RPG in my opinion. But doing all this kind of stuff is a great, like, this is a perfect platform for the word of mouth for the next Witcher, because people who don't know will be like, oh, Cyberpunk, mind when that shat the bed. But then people who have been playing it have been like, aye, but they went back and fixed everything, and look, they're still saying it. I'm gonna sneeze.
Bless you.
Oh,
you're allergic to Cyberpunk. It's alright.
I'm allergic to Cyberpunk. I'm allergic to Keanu Reeves' inability to act.
Oh, poor Keanu.
Oh, come on.
The loveliest man in showbiz.
Johnny Mnemonic himself. Like,
look, I'm sure Keanu Reeves is a nice man, but he's never kicked a ball in any decent film. Okay? Matrix, he's fine in it, but he just stands there and he catches bullets. Speed? That was all about it. I've never seen. Is that
that's your, as long as you've seen it?
Was that pre-Matrix? Was that?
Well, obviously, yeah. I'm not going to take my opinion on a Keanu Reeves film.
I'll give you Bill and Ted, the first one.
Bill and Ted's a good film.
I'll give you Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Never seen Bram Stoker's Dracula.
The man's got the day the Earth stood still.
He doesn't really act in John Wick. He just kicks the shit out of people.
Yeah. He doesn't really act in anything. He just stands there and reads lines.
Bless him.
Got a lot of time for big Keanu.
Get him on this podcast.
He'd do it.
I'll see what he's up for. Yeah, he was busy today.
He's been playing Starfield. He's trying to get to that embargo.
He got a code.
Someone had to. But no, I think you're right, Jordan. It's like they're getting out in front of the Cyberpunk mess, because I think a lot of the stuff they're doing with that expansion is both like a PR thing as much as like a design thing. Like, people want the next Witcher and they're very excited for it, and you don't want bless you again you don't want millions of people being turned off by going, oh, but Cyberpunk, they burnt me with that, I don't want to be burnt again. If they come out of Phantom Liberty with like a half decent RPG and like restored faith, that'll win half the battle for them, I think.
Definitely.
Plus he came out and said, like, Nowakowski said we're moving to Unreal Engine, We're not using the red engine anymore, and you're like, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Given what happened to that, that's a perfectly understandable
Combat in
explanation.
The Witcher 4 is not going to be dog shit. Like,
Yeah,
you heard it
they've
here
obviously
first.
just decided amongst
Thank
them.
you.
They've just
Thank you, Jade. We can get some Witcher slander on this podcast.
It's an 8 out of 10, isn't it?
That's strong. I think it's famously a 7 out of 10, just like Breath of the Wild.
All right,
before-
Here we go.
Calm
Here we
down.
go.
Before we go,
First is Keanu, and then it's Breath of the
I
Wild.
was with you
What is
then.
this?
I was with you until the Breath of the Wild slander.
everyone
Let's move
agrees with
on.
me about Breath of the Wild.
See,
Most
once you
people
start,
agree
see, once
with
you
me
start
that
bad
disagree with
with
me.
Ben Affleck, I'm never coming on this thing again.
Ben Affleck seems like a decent bloke.
I still haven't
but
seen
don't know.
Gone Girl. Is that him?
And that's,
He has Gone Girl.
Yeah.
That's spoilers. He's the one that's away.
he's the girl who's
Um,
gone.
Oh, I won't watch it now. Never mind.
I've got
we
a
talked
lot
far
of
too
time
much
for
about-
I've got a lot of time for Affleck.
Wait,
What's the
have
one?
either
What's
you
the one he
seen
was in? Argo. That's
Argo?
gripping.
Oh, that's a good one.
Good
Mm.
film.
Either of you two seen the first Meg film?
No,
Big
but
Shark?
it's very much.
I have,
my
yeah.
jam. I'd like to see
I
it.
need to
How
see the
is it?
second one.
Okay, is it good? This first Meg film?
It's not like cinema, but it's a good monster movie.
I'm not interested in cinema. Full disclosure, it's very likely that I'm going to have to see the cinematic masterpiece that is the Meg 2 pretty soon. So
Jason
I
Statham
need to
like
know.
kicks the fuck out of a giant shark. I think that's
So
with loads of
I sat
Korean
through-
people.
I sat through 2/3 of Oppenheimer while looking at my phone, so I feel like I could see anything at this point. I could go and watch The Nook of the North at this point, and I'd be quite.
You'll be alright.
fine.
Meg 2's alright.
Yeah. Speaking of old things, Chris, you've got a couple of games
Lovely.
that you want to talk about this week, and I'm curious about these. You can take your Starfield hype and you can shove it, as they say.
Yep.
Tell me about first Under the Waves.
Yeah, you can ram your Starfield basically, because I've been playing Under the Waves, which is the first kind of indie release from Quantic Dream. Which is I don't know if I said
So
that.
what was that? Was that? Sorry, I just heard a siren coming up the road.
I don't know if I told you, but when I went to France a few months ago to visit their new studio, because they're showing off that because NetEase owns them now, and they're like, come and see our new studio. And when I get told, oh, you'll get picked up at the airport, and I was like, this has never happened to me. I've never had that experience where somebody's standing with a picture.
Was
So
it
with
David
a
Cage?
sign with your name on it, I was like, oh, this is exciting. I feel like
David Cage was at the airport waiting for him.
it just came up with a notification. I had to hide in the toilet for 2 hours. I was like, well, this is good. I've never had this situation where someone's holding my name on a sign. This is going to be cool. I'm going to feel like a VIP. And I turned up and there was nobody there.
Oh.
And I was like, oh shit. And the guy phoned me. He's like, where are you? I'm like, I'm here. And finally the guy just kind of walked up and he said, Mr. Quantic. I was like, this guy
That's me.
thought my real name was
That's me.
Quantic Dream. I was like, yeah, I'm
Johnny
I know, yeah,
Quantic.
I'm a rapper. So that's by the by. The point is that Under the Waves is their first kind of indie game, and it's really good, but it's quite hard hitting. So basically, you play as a guy called Stan, who has had a tragic incident, we'll just say, in his life, which I was at great pain. I was told at great lengths not to reveal, even though you can guess it within 30 seconds.
Does his wife die?
Close.
Oh.
His wife's in it.
His wife's in the arm.
Oh, it's like Metal Gear. Okay.
So he to get away from this loss, he goes like and lives in a bunker under the sea. He's like a professional diver, so he works for some oil company, and he lives in this underground hub, underwater hub for like days and days and days, and to get away from it all. And it starts with him doing like menial tasks. So you've got to fix like oil leaks and all this kind of stuff, and it's really nice. It's kind of gentle. The soundtrack's fantastic. Ambient, I believe they call it. The kids call it. But then over time he starts losing it a bit and like kind of going slightly mad, and he starts finding out that the oil company itself is quite dodgy, funnily enough. And then so it all kicks off, and it's really good. It's fairly short. It's like 8 to 10 hours. And then like there's, without going too much into it, it gets like quite hard hitting at the end as he has to confront his grief in a really weird way. There's like there's a choice at the end. There's like a really difficult choice you need to make near the end. But the game's buggy as hell as well, which is really annoying. So I went.
It's
I went.
a feature.
Yeah. So I went. I'm going to pick this one because this is the one I really want to see, and then I'll reload the save and I'll do the other ending and see, because there's two endings basically. So I watched the first ending like in tears, told the wife, and she was in tears as well. I was like, what is going on with this game? Is a disgrace. And then I went, okay, right, let's tackle the second one. And when I loaded the save, there's like a bit, something goes past your window and you've got to go and look at it, and that triggers a mission, and it wouldn't let me look at it. Like the thing didn't appear, and it's like broken. I'm like, I'm never going to see the fucking second ending now. So I don't know what the other ending is yet, because the game crashed on me. But it's really good. Like the only other thing I don't like about it is sometimes there's really jarring moments where, like, unintentionally, it just doesn't go like it's supposed to. So there's bits where, like, you're swooping through like the ocean and really dramatic music's playing because you've just finished a mission, and then you just hit a point where you're at your next destination and the music just goes, it just stops. The music just stops instantly, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's the end of that bit. And there was a bit right at the end where he's done this. There's a real environmental theme to the game as well. It's made in collaboration with a diver-owned charity about environment and saving the earth and all this kind of stuff. And so you're picking up plastic bottles and all this shit all the way through it, because why not? And
about woke.
It's very woke, yeah, under the woke. And there's a bit where he does this big long monologue about the company, the oil company, they're a disgrace, and then all this. That's the one thing I hate. Sorry, I'm rambling here about this game. The voice acting is infuriating because he pauses in every single sentence, like dramatic pauses. So it's like, the oil company, they're not doing what they should be doing, and every line is like this, and I'm like, for God's sake. So he does this big long monologue which is longer than it needs to, and at this point I realised if you go to the in-cockpit view while you're in your submarine, you can sing a sea shanty just for a laugh, and it was maybe an Easter egg that you were supposed to discover at the start of the game, and I only discover it right at the end during this monologue, and he just stops the monologue instantly. So he's like, and I can't believe they've done this, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of fucked. I'll put it on Twitter later. I recorded it because I thought it was hilarious. But by and large, it's a very good game. It's quite emotional, but it's short enough, and it's got bugs in it, but it's kind of worth putting up with, I'd say.
And your other wee hit, I knew this would be a Chris Scullion joint because I saw Jeff Gersman going mental about it as well, and I was like, okay, but birds of a feather, you old men, tell us about the making of Karateka.
I really like it. So this is like digital. I did a wee mini kind of rant about this a couple of weeks ago before I had the code, and it was like Digital Eclipse, who did Atari 50, are now doing this series, the Gold Master series, I think it's called, where they'll take a single game and go through the making of it in like an interactive timeline. So this is the first big game from Jordan Mechner, who did Prince of Persia eventually. This is the game he did before Prince of Persia. And it's basically the story. So it starts with like photographs of him as a child and how he goes to uni, and but the amount of access they've had to him and his past is insane, because he's the kind of guy clearly who just keeps everything he's ever done. So it tells you the story of how he got an Apple II and developed for it and stuff. And he said, when he was like 16, he made these prototype fake asteroids games, and then you get to play those. Like he's made his prototypes available. Cool. So and it's like these have never been seen before, never been played before. So you get to play his shitty wee asteroid games, like when he was just starting out. And then there's a bit where he makes contact with Broderbund, who would end up developing Prince of Persia, and he says, I've got this game called I can't remember the name of it, Death Bounce, I think it's called. Like another kind of asteroids game, but with little bouncy balls in it. And he sends them the prototype, so again you get to play that prototype. And this is the best bit in the whole thing, because you get this letter. He's kept all the letters, so you get to see the back and forth between him and them basically saying, this game's shit, fix this. So he tweaks it and then sends them a new prototype, and you get to play that. And then they come back and say it needs a story, so he says, okay, well, here's a story, makes a new prototype, and you get to play it. So you're basically getting to play a game through all these stages of its development. And this is a game that didn't even get released, because then it moves on to Karateka, and it's so the amount of detail they go into. I'm rambling, but if you've got any interest whatsoever in what went into the making of a game back in the day, this is the best ever way it's been done, and this is the first in a series. So they're announcing the second one soon, I understand, and it's just going to keep going. And they're £20 a go, well, 17 quid, $20. So it's like a nice kind of price, because they're billing them as like interactive documentaries rather than games, and it's excellent. Definitely recommended.
Very nice. I was curious about that one. It's a it's a period wherein a million massive games are going to come out, but it's one that's once it quietens down, I think it's worth getting, because you can do it in a couple of nights, and they've handled it in such a way that even if you've never heard of the game, which I think is what they're banking on, like a lot of people having never heard of it or never played it, because obviously a lot of people know Prince of Persia, but not as many people know this one. It's laid out in a way that you give a shit by the game. You give a shit about the game by the time you reach it in the timeline, and you've seen the development process, and then so by the time you get to it, you're like, this isn't just some random retro game that's been hurled into a compilation just to make up the numbers. You know about the game, and you care about the game by the time you get to it. And it really elevates it. It's an amazing way to handle retro games, I think. Nice. I hope they get to do as many of them as possible. It's never going to happen, but imagine something like that with Nintendo access.
Can you imagine? Could you
One
imagine?
day.
I mean, they've done Konami. They did the Turtles, the Cowabunga collection. Obviously, they did Atari 50 recently, which is like the best retro compilation I've ever played, because it does the same thing. And now they're doing these, and yeah, I would love to see like a Doom one or something like that, because there's, at one point, like John Romero writes him a letter. A young John Romero writes him a letter, like 17-year-old, and the letters in this compilation thing as well. So I'd love to see them doing Doom or something like that. That'd be amazing. Well, like prototypes.
My favourite John Romero moment. There was an interview with him in the mid-90s. I think it's just before Daikatana. Daikatana, the hero, is called Hiro Miyamoto, right? And I think it was just about this time when he's been interviewed, and he's like, and the guy's like, "Well, don't you think Miyamoto would be pretty impressed to meet you?" And he just goes, "No."
That was the most ill thought out marketing campaign ever, though, by Daikatana, wasn't it?
He's going to make you a bitch, wasn't that it?
John Romero's about to make you his bitch. It's like the game wasn't that good. so he failed.
God bless John Romero.
Yeah, good man.
Living it up in Ireland these days.
Yeah, just in a small little town. Imagine being out in the piss and just walking past John Romero.
Can you imagine?
That's not to say everyone in Ireland is always on the piss, but you know.
He is. He is specifically.
He is specifically.
John Romero specifically is on the piss.
You can send any comments, questions, and concerns to Rangers Got Pumped in Europe. Podcast at videogameschronicle.com. Thank you for listening to this podcast. You can go and check out all of the Starfield coverage. You're going to be drowned in it. Here's my recommendation. Get off X. Just read a couple of reviews and then go and play the game. Xbox is giving it away for free, so just play it on Game Pass. Ignore all the discourse. Ignore all the shite. Can't believe that guy who was selling leaked copies is doing a 12 stretch for it. God bless him.
12 years.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That's the way it confirmed it. He's facing it. Like that's the maximum sentence he could get.
I watched some of his streams. I hope he defends himself. You can follow me at Jordan Midler. You can follow Chris at Scully1888. You can follow Jade at Kona YMA6. We'd like to thank the great Grant Kirkhope for the VGC Podcast theme song. Side note, is that Rayman DLC out for Rabbids?
Yeah, I think it came out
Yeah,
yesterday. People are
it.
playing it.
Oh, I don't know. Interesting. Bring back 10 years since Rayman Legends, and they've no bothered their arse to do a
Rayman
new
Legends
one.
is incredible as well. Yeah, make a new Rayman.
Come on, man. Yeah, Rayman Legends again. But until next week, remember, follow VGC on Twitter at VGC News. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and all that good stuff. Say goodbye, Chris.
Champions League, you're having a laugh. Goodbye, Chris.
Say goodbye, Jade.
Goodbye, everyone. Play Starfield.
And we will go away and play Starfield.
Are we doing listening to this shite? Go and
Ignore
play
the
it.
takes, mate. Just get out there. Go to space.
Away and play Starfield. Come on, the Celtic for the weekend.
I love Keanu Reeves.